I'm just going to go ahead and I helped lock you away. I'm going to go over to your house for dinner. In what world is that appropriate? Well, Leon's emails with Jeffrey Epstein came out and they're pretty interesting, aren't they? His mindset around it does not seem conciliatory at all. He still continues to defend his conduct, Ryan, which I personally find disgusting.
Breaking Points just revealed that there are new Epstein corruption revelations, including the detail that Epstein dined with one of his former prosecutors even after he was convicted and received a sweetheart deal for child molestation charges. And in this clip, Sagar and Ryan get into some other things that we've learned about Epstein and his connections to Leon Black, who mysteriously gave him over $150 million, and we're still not sure why. So let's watch. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Turning now to Epstein, we didn't have time to get into this, and it actually is worth fully going through all of the new information. Let's go ahead and put this up here on the screen. This was from a new release by the House Oversight Committee, which detailed a bunch of new Epstein files, as well as an interview with Alex Acosta, who was the prosecutor who ended up giving Epstein his sweetheart deal. Julie K. Brown, huge shout out to her from the Miami Herald. She's been covering this stuff from day one, and I look to her always for some of her information. She has even more detailed knowledge of the case than I do. What she was able to uncover is that Matthew Menschel, who was the chief of the criminal division of the Miami U.S. Attorney Office and helped negotiate Epstein's sweetheart deal, which allowed him to be released in 2009, is listed multiple times as having dinner and meetings with Epstein after leaving the U.S. Attorney's Office. So this is a huge bombshell because this is years after his release.
Oh, before
this is
you go on to that one?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is for context for later.
Yeah.
Notice on that one, 11:30 appointment with Leon Black.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'll get back to that.
Put that one in your pocket.
Don't worry.
Same day.
I'm coming back to Leon.
Same day.
All right. Leon, yes. But on the same day, having dinner with Matt Menschel, the very same prosecutor who was part of the office. In what world is that appropriate? You helped lock somebody away, allegedly, even with the sweetheart deal, for a registered sex offender, right? And then you're having dinner with that person 3 years later. It's like, do you have any, semblance of making sure no conflict of interest? And
it's a Amanda Knox stuff right here.
Yeah, or even at a human level. If you, Ryan, would you ever knowingly go into the house of somebody who was a registered sex offender?
No.
Yeah, exactly. All right. And this is my thing.
And he knows because he prosecuted him.
I always think about this with guys like George Stephanopoulos and others who are like, yeah, I had dinner with him. I go, maybe it's just me. I Google everybody who asked me to have dinner. Okay.
Yeah, and it's not just whether it's appropriate or not. This lays and expands upon the foundation of what many people believe about the Epstein case and the Epstein conspiracy, is that this was a sweetheart deal organized in some way by the deep state, that this was arranged to give him a sweetheart deal, get him out of the most ruthless parts of the crime's punishment that should have happened to him, by being in this cover-up, that Menschel dined with Epstein after his conviction, after it was known about, and after he was one of the prosecutors. It just shows that the corruption and the protections of Epstein were farther than even what we thought a week ago. And I just don't see how this isn't, getting more coverage, especially at a time when Trump was raked over the coals by the liberal establishment, by leftists, and by even part of his base for clearly covering up the Epstein files and digging in his heels against people like Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Ro Khanna that want to get to the bottom of it. It's absolutely insane.
And if you're even remotely sketchy, I'm like, yeah, it's not happening. And I can tell you I've been invited to some sketchy stuff around here. And why? Usually it has to do with arms dealers and stuff like that. And even then I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Who's paying for this, right? It's one of those where there's some blood money here on the table. I don't want to have anything to do with that. Or I'll split the bill with you if I think it's interesting. That's the thing where apparently I'm a YouTuber and I hold myself to that standard. And these guys are like, oh yeah, I prosecuted you. And even though you're a registered sex offender, I'm just going to go ahead and I helped lock you away. I'm going to go over to your house for dinner.
And it's probably not with people, I don't know about him specifically, but it's probably not even though or despite, it's because.
There you go.
Yeah, it's because of it. And it's not just him, by the way. Ehud Barak lived at his Manhattan mansion for prolonged periods, visited him 30 plus times after his conviction for the same offenses, by the way, that Virginia Giuffre has said was one of the people he trafficked her to in her recent biography that just came out, I believe, today, by the way. And Bill Gates and other people that hung around with Epstein after this time frame. it wasn't just Menschel, but Menschel's an interesting and stunning revelation because that was one of his prosecutors. It's utterly absurd to pretend that there isn't some government cover-up here. There always was, and it will never be divulged to the public voluntarily because the same party in control of the deep state was there when the Epstein investigation happened. And the Democrats are probably implicated too. That's why they didn't release the information when Biden was in office. This thing crosses multiple spectrums of political thought and in the legal community and the political community.
Because he knows the details of what Epstein is into.
Yes.
He wants to hang out with him because he
Bingo,
wants to
because
get
he
into that
probably
too.
investigated. He probably had some of his tax returns and stuff in front of him. He goes, yo, I need to get in on this. He's like, this is a good deal right here. By the way, speaking of that, as Ryan said, hold for Leon Black. Leon, I've talked about Leon from day one in the Epstein case. It remains one of the most mystifying. This is one of the titans of Wall Street, $9 billion net worth, $150 million payment to the Jeffrey Epstein estate that has been revealed for, quote, tax advice. Nobody knows why. He's been friends with him for decades. He's defended his relationship with Epstein, said he had no idea, put him on the board of his charities, decades-long friendship. Well, Leon's emails with Jeffrey Epstein came out, and they're pretty interesting, aren't they? They say Epstein was furious. For years, he had relied on Leon Black as his primary source of income, advising him on everything from taxes to his world-class art collection. By 2016, Black seemed reluctant to keep paying him tens of millions of dollars per year, so Epstein threw a tantrum. Epstein wrote in an email to Mr. Black, quote, he was another waste of money and space, attacked Mr. Black's children as retarded for supposedly making his, that's relatable, for making a mess of his estate. The typo-ridden tirade was one of dozens of previously unreported emails reviewed by the New York Times in which Epstein hectored Mr. Black, demanding tens of millions of dollars beyond the $150 million he had already been paid.
And by the way, ostensibly the reason why he paid Epstein $150 million was to do his taxes. That's why he got $150 million. There's no other explanation than that. And I'm sorry, the best CPAs in the world don't cost $150 million. And Epstein wasn't one of the best CPAs in the world. This was some kind of money laundering scheme that somehow Leon Black was tied into. He hasn't been scrutinized deeply for this, but we know because of these leaked emails that there's more to this story.
The pressure campaign, Ryan, appeared to work. Mr. Black, for decades, who was one of the richest and most high-profile figures on Wall Street, forked tens of millions of dollars in fees and loans, albeit less than Mr. Epstein had been seeking. Of all the relationships, his friendship with Mr. Black is the most important. He served jail time for soliciting prostitution. Mr. Black kept him afloat for many years.
For the record, I don't believe in that. I think that Epstein's most important personal relationship was with Les Wexner and not Leon Black. Les Wexner was the one that gave him tens of millions of dollars as well, including his $77 million mansion in Manhattan, the biggest private mansion in Manhattan. Ostensibly, again, for no exact reason, to be Wexner's money manager. Wexner had executives in his own big companies. He ran L Brands, which meant Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie and Fitch, Bath and Body Works, etc. Coming to him and asking, who is this guy? Why does he have so much control now? And there's no reason for it. And guess who has never been interviewed about that? Les Wexner. He's become a hermit, never talking about this or his connections to Epstein, despite the fact he still lives in Ohio. I think he's the richest person in Ohio.
Emails provide the most complete picture yet of their relationship. Now, to be clear, for legal purposes, and with Mr. Black, I am simply noting how shocking it is for a titan of Wall Street, a private equity giant, one of the most well-known billionaires in the city of New York, how completely opposite it is to the way that the Apollo Group and others would conduct business, to seemingly constantly just caving to demands for tens of millions of dollars from Jeffrey. That's all I am noting. You can draw your own conclusion very specifically as to why anybody would ever act like that who made $9 billion and doesn't.
Yeah, the official story is that Leon Black, at the head of one of the biggest asset management firms in the entire country, that Apollo Global was, needed to give Epstein hundreds of millions of dollars to supposedly manage his money. As the CEO of that asset management bank, you would need to give Epstein money? Epstein had no experience in that. He did have experience moving money. He certainly was involved in money movement that was probably related to Iran-Contra and things that happened in the 1980s when he crossed paths with Stephen Hoffenberg and Adnan Khashoggi and Douglas Lease. But in no way was he some brilliant investor that was going to invest this guy's wealth. It just doesn't withstand any scrutiny, the official story.
To conduct business that way in any other.
Similar tone, and Black denies all things.
Yeah, Black vehemently denies.
Similar tone from the New York Times article that Sagar just put up. They write, and this is one of those delightful sentences in the New York Times, echoing Sagar, and quote, and for reasons that are unknown, Mr. Black wired hundreds of thousands of dollars to at least 3 women who were associated with Mr. Epstein, according to court documents and notes taken by congressional investigators that were shared with the Times. Representatives of Mr. Black did not respond to questions about those payments to women. So in other words, representatives responded to a bunch of other questions that the Times sent, but ignored those questions. So I like this phrase, for reasons that are unknown, Mr. Black wired hundreds of thousands of dollars to at least women. We don't know why.
Yeah, they are.
Just good friends.
Remain unknown to this day.
Good friends with these women.
Yeah, and there's a lot of wire transfers we do know about. Well, we don't know about them, but they exist to the tune of $1.8 billion between Epstein and, quote, people of prominence that Ron Wyden has said that is in the hands of the Treasury Department right now. Ron Wyden's team and Marsha Blackburn's team, another senator, actually look through these records and want the Senate to have full access to this via subpoena. They haven't been able to convince the Senate to do that, especially because this Trump administration is so dug in on the cover-up, just like the Biden administration was. Wyden's a Democrat, but he's actually been stunningly consistent about trying to get this information in front of us, showing where those transfers from Epstein to other people were going. And we'll never get that because there is this cover-up and all these red herrings about nothing exists in the Epstein case. It's all absurd.
They were they needed a little help get through the weekend or something.
It happens. Yeah. Who amongst us has not floated our friends' girlfriends, right? I mean,
with hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I do it every day, right? Of course.
Totally. And we're going to insinuate something about that? That's outrageous.
That's right. Exactly. I'm sure my wife would be cool with it, right?
Actually, the girls are lining up to send that money to Sagar. He's actually being very humble here. It's actually in the other direction that happens with Sagar.
She'd be totally cool with it. So here's my other personal favorite from Mr. Black's lawyer. To imply Mr. Epstein somehow had influence over Mr. Black is false and patently absurd. Okay? To imply Mr. Epstein, who demanded tens of millions of dollars and received tens of millions of dollars and called his children retarded and also hectored and berated him, to imply he had any influence over Mr. Black is false and patently absurd. That's from Leon Black. Again, these guys, you think you just get $9 billion? You think somebody just hands it to you? No, you get it by being a swashbuckling deal maker.
Yeah, I just got $150 million from this guy for no reason. It's just all charity. He had no influence over Black. There was probably blackmail of Black. Let's just be real about this. Let's just be real, because nothing explains that amount of money transfer unless it's intelligence related or related to blackmail payments. And Leon Black was worth a lot of money. I think he just said $9 billion worth. He could pay that as an extraction from blackmail. Of course, Black, pardon the pun, doesn't admit to the blackmail, but that's likely what we're seeing here.
What if I was running the Apollo? By the way, these guys are legends on Wall Street, right? Apollo. Does Apollo just let somebody who they're doing a leverage buyout of demand certain terms of conditions? Is that how you got $9 billion in net worth? No, you would be a bankrupt, right? So we know he knows how to do business and to say no, how to say fuck you. That's literally part of being a Wall Street financer. And he did event. Well, yeah, we can get to that. Ish. But the point remains something for reasons that remain unknown that he continued to hand him tens of millions of dollars. Okay. All right, let's go to the next part here.
Yeah, nothing to see there. And, there's not enough questions being asked about this, but I'm glad there are journalists like Sagar that care about this story, follow it super closely, because this is already out of the news cycle, man. I hate to say it. This was the August story, not the October story, but it behooves us to continually talk about this, try to get to the bottom of this, because this really is at the intersection of the deepest and darkest evils of this deep state. This guy with political connections all over the place to the most prominent people in the world conducting a sex child blackmail operation, trafficking children to people of prominence for blackmail, maybe on the part of Israel or the part of a foreign country. I think that's the most plausible, direction that we're pointed in here, and we're just going to ignore it. It's so absurd.
Here. This gets to the interview with Alex Acosta. I read the entire thing, several hundred pages. Kind of boring, to be honest. They didn't do a very good job. But guys, please put D3, please, up on the screen just to show you. The signature claim from Alex Acosta is that any trial of Jeffrey Epstein, quote, would have been a crapshoot. Now, this is a central issue because remember, Alex Acosta was the labor secretary under Trump. He was the prosecutor who did the sweetheart deal with Epstein. After he resigns as a labor secretary, the Office of Professional Review over the Justice Department does an internal investigation of the Epstein non-prosecution agreement. They find that Alex Acosta and his office acted improperly. Now, Acosta contends throughout this entire interview that he did nothing wrong and that he got the best possible deal. Now remember, the retroactive review by the DOJ specifically says that is not true. So they find fault with the actions of his office.
Think of that. He's saying it's a crapshoot when there were over 40 witnesses in that Epstein case, and the prosecuting attorney under Acosta, Marie Villafana, said that this was a slam dunk, that she wanted this guy to go away. And the DOJ even apologized for it, something the government almost never does because of how horribly this case was handled. If you believe, that it was a horrible handling of the case instead of an outright protection of Epstein by the deep state, which I think is far more plausible.
Acosta stands up for the actions of his office, effectively blaming the victims, saying, oh, well, they weren't credible enough to be able to bring them to trial. By the way, remember, that is in direct contravention of what some of the agents and the other people on the case said. So this is not 100% their view.
And what a slap in the face to those victims, by the way. Many of them still seek justice and still deserve it. Just utterly absurd. What a fraud this guy is.
View of the entire U.S. Attorney's Office. It is the view of Mr. Acosta. I will say, because there have been some sketchy questions here around the claim previously that he had said he belonged to intelligence, he claims that he never said that. He says, I never said it. So I want to make that very clear, because that's a quote I've relied on in the past.
It's one of the,
probably one of the most famous claims.
Yeah.
So I want to be clear that he now emphatically denies. He said, I never heard that from anybody. I didn't tell it to Steve Bannon. I have no idea where that comes from. So let's be clear. That's what he said. Now, I've laid out my other case for why I do think he was at the very least involved with multiple foreign intelligence agencies. But nonetheless, Alex Acosta says there was nothing untoward. I never had any indication he was intelligence or whatever. Nobody told me what to do, which, by the way, again, that doesn't fit with some of the past timeline. Like the previous timeline was that Washington actually made a phone call around this from the DOJ, but you have to get very dark and into the weeds on this. I think the fundamental premise, though, is even if we take all the intel stuff out of it and we just keep it focused on the victims, he basically was victim blaming throughout the entire thing. He said, yeah, they weren't credible, they made stuff up, MySpace page, they were sketchy, and so that's why the sweetheart deal is the best that we could possibly get. Again, that's totally disputed. So his mindset around it does not seem conciliatory at all. He still continues to defend his conduct, Ryan, which I personally find disgusting. Intelligence, no, if anything, it's worse. I'm like, oh, so you just, they didn't believe them. He even says in there, he goes, well, the times were different. People didn't believe women at that time. I was like, so you're blaming the culture at the time? What is this? It was crazy.
It really was, and that's so absurd, and it doesn't even withstand basic scrutiny about Epstein's behavior. He fled to Israel and was starting to, disperse his assets throughout the world in different banks at that point, thinking that, if he was going to go to Israel, he could invoke Israeli citizenship like more than several dozen people have done to escape extradition for child, molestation charges. And if you don't think that's true, that is documented. That is something based on their home law, where if any Jew throughout the world goes to Israel, they can invoke Israeli citizenship on that basis and then not be extradited back to their home country for sex trafficking charges. We're seeing it right now with that case that just unfolded recently in this FBI sting in Nevada. We covered that in this channel a little bit. Alexandrovich, that's the guy's name. That was the case here. And we need to know here that this just contravenes what we know about this happening, where he said that he was told Epstein was intelligence and to leave it alone. This is from a 2019 story, but this actually happened during the vetting process when Acosta, despite this madness, despite this cover-up, was given the reins of the Labor Department as the Secretary of Labor under Trump. He was rewarded despite his duplicity in the Epstein sweetheart deal. And right here is the passage in question. This isn't part of what's called the Epstein case file. That's not what this was part of. This was part of conversations that took place in the vetting process for him to become Secretary of Labor. And this was asked to him. It was highly documented. I think that this is part of the public record. Now he's saying, no, of course this didn't happen, but I think we know better. And I think this more plausibly explains what happened in this situation rather than, the lies that he didn't do that. So that's where we're at. I hope the Epstein victims receive justice. I'm glad that there's more information from these leaked emails and the revelations that came from them. But I do want to hear what you guys think. Let me know down below. Why is this not getting very much coverage anymore? Is this a stunning revelation that needs more coverage? Do you think we'll ever get to the bottom of the Epstein story? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Breaking Points. They do a great job. I love the fact they're still covering this. And if you like this video, please consider becoming a YouTube member of mine. You can click the join button below to do that. It'd mean the world to me, and I'd really appreciate that support. And in return, I'll give you access to all my videos before they go live to the general public on YouTube. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.